I woke up one day and realized I had no pain in that knee. And I had had that all of my life since age 20.
Paula, how did you find carnivore?
Hi, Dave. I'm so happy to meet with you. Thank you very much for all you do for the world. It's really a great thing you're doing. Um, Here's the short answer. I was looking for why a ketogenic diet was working so well for me and making me feel so good. And I wanted the science behind that. So I went to the internet to find out. And I started with Sten Ekberg because that's the person whose name I knew from the person who had introduced me to keto about 4 years before. So I watched his videos and I love him, but I felt like I was taking thousands of pages of notes of, well, you have to buy this you have to make sure you have enough of this micronutrient and that micronutrient. And I was just getting overwhelmed and thinking, I can't do this. It's just like, I can't keep track of all these micronutrients. It's too much. So I kind of lost interest, but as YouTube, sends you videos that are related, I began to get other videos. And the first video I remember getting was from Carrie Mann of Homestead How, who was interviewing Sean. I think it was Sean White, and he had just lost a dramatic amount of weight in that. And that was a compelling interview because I had never heard of anybody losing that much weight in 1 year. And it was so interesting. And then, of course, I looked at Carrie Mann's own 30-day update after he started carnivore, and I started following him. Shortly thereafter, I got a suggestion to uh, it was a Ken Berry video interviewing Kelly Hogan, but it said, look what happens to a woman who eats only meat for 13 years. And I clicked on that because I was like, I got to see this. And her story was very interesting. And she, lost a lot of weight by just eating McDonald's patties and stuff. But she looked amazing and she was clearly living a very vibrant life and had had her children, while carnivore and everything. In fact, it had enabled her to have children. And so her testimony was very compelling. And then the next thing I saw was an interview with Michaela Peterson, where she was asked all these questions like, well, don't you miss the things you used to eat? And and she answered these questions really well. And one of the things she said was, nothing tastes as good as feeling well feels. And that really stuck with me because I knew that if I did this, I was going to struggle with giving up sweet things because I had always eaten sugar, not overeaten, but just really enjoyed sugar, baked goods and things. So, and then I joined the amazing, like thrilling saga of Carrie Mann trying to find Bill Knott and prayed for Bill to answer his plea to get in touch. And then when they got in touch, and I've just been following Bill Knott ever since, and watching this amazing transformation of this wonderful human being. So I was really sold on this. I probably started looking at it I think I got my first carnivore connection in probably April or May of 2023. And by July, I was like, I've got to try this. And so I remember I went to camp and I was worried how I was going to feed myself there because they have all these vegetables and fruits and healthy foods. But I packed a bunch of things with me. I brought a bunch of meats and some cheeses and I put them in the fridge at the camp. And I stayed carnivore for like 5 days out of the 6. Um, but over the next many months, I could never really stick with carnivore for more than like 6 or 7 days because the cravings were intense. So now I'm going to go back and start with how I first found out about keto. And I'm going to start a little bit earlier, actually, with my childhood because I want to give sort of the sequence. I was raised in a large Catholic family. My parents were very committed to really good health choices. So we ate really well. When everybody was eating white bread and American cheese, my parents were ordering Pepperidge Farm bread and buying whole cheeses and sending me to school with like whole grain breads and salami and nice cheeses, and everybody else was eating their white bread and their mayonnaise and their so it was a very good well-rounded upbringing food wise, and we had a couple of side dishes and a main dish every night. We always had some kind of meat or fish if it was Fridays and or Lent. And we were all just well grown, as the doctor would call it. We were well grown. We also had a real focus on exercise. So we took walks every night after dinner. And I was on swim team from 6 until like 15. And I was always riding my bike. And when I was 11, my older sister and my younger sister and I started running together. So we ran like 4 times a week, 2 or 3 miles. And because I was always late to everything, I walked to school and I rode my bike to middle school and high school because I always missed the bus. And so I got a lot of exercise. And in high school, I rode on the crew team, and we were just generally very fit and health conscious. Though I can't throw or catch a ball to save my life, but if it's not a ball sport, I can do it. So anyway, I continued this in college, did a lot of walking, a lot of biking, a lot of running. And then I developed this really bad knee pain in my right knee. And I went to the doctor and he said, "Oh, it's chondromalacia. You're deteriorating the interior of your kneecap and it's lifelong. And you're just going to have to kind of stop biking and running and walking long distances and hiking." And I was really disappointed because those are all things I loved. But I could see that when I would go on a run, even like a couple blocks, it would really hurt. Not only that night, but like 3 or 4 nights, I would have trouble going to sleep because the pain was so hard. So I was just very disappointed in my body for doing this to me. But, um, that was sort of the beginning of the wheels falling off, right? And I was only like 20 or 21 when I noticed that. Um, and then I got married and then completed college, and then we began to have children. And I was always slender to medium. Actually, I was always kind of medium height, medium weight, but I was never overweight. But after my first kid, I went right back to my original weight. And then my second child, I went back to like within a couple pounds. Then I had my third child and we moved to the country, which you would think would be like more exercise, but actually it was very restrictive because we lived on a big highway and I couldn't get my stroller and just push it around like I'd been doing with the other. So I actually got less exercise, and we also had less access to fresh food, which is exactly the opposite of what we expected. And so we were eating a lot more canned and boxed foods. And I never could shed that last like 15 pounds after that third child. And so I just was like permanently in the overweight category now. And then I had a fourth child, one every 2 years. And after that child, we had moved back from the country, but things were kind of deteriorating at home. And there was a lot of challenges. And um, I didn't get as much exercise. My partner was not very supportive of that, so I didn't get the kind of opportunities that I'd had before. And we ended up separating, and I was then on my own with 4 kids, really little. So I began to, and by this time, after the fourth birth, I was in the obese category. I had just like gone over the edge of obese now. So at that time, I was 5'6", and all my young adult life, I was 5'6". And my top weight at that time, probably about a year after I had my last child, was 191. And I'd always weighed in the 130s when I was or 120s to 130s as a young person. So it was the pregnancies, but it was also the change in my lifestyle. And also now that I know more about it, it was the food. And like I said, I was raised, eating very healthy. And even my parents, like when butter was becoming rejected, my parents were like, no, no, we're going to still eat butter. And when eggs became passe, my parents were like, no, that's ridiculous. We're going to eat eggs. People have been eating eggs for centuries. We're going to eat the eggs. So we still had eggs, meat, butter, cheese, and lots of fresh fruits and vegetables and grains. And so it was very well rounded. It was the perfect, like, balanced American diet. Um, but it also wasn't infiltrated so much by the processed things that are going on in the food industry now. When, in the 60s and early 70s, food was much cleaner. And so we all were pretty darn healthy. But as I was raising my kids, the food industry was changing and things were being more and more corrupted. I think the soil was more depleted and the um, just things were being snuck in. Like there's a food additive that's now in everything, called modified food starch, and it's actually got like 7 or 8 other names. And it used to only be in like 6 or 7 products, but it triggers something in the brain that makes you crave it. And now the food industry adds it to just about everything. And if you look for it and its names, you'll see them on every label. It's crazy. So that's just one example, but I think there are lots and lots of examples of that. So even if you're trying to eat pretty clean and pretty well, you end up taking in quite a bit of that stuff anyway. Along the way, I did continue to try to exercise. One of the things that I did was jazzercise. And in that jazzercise program, I was very careful, but I still ended up getting an injury in my right elbow and an injury in my right um, shoulder. And ever since those injuries, which happened when my youngest son was probably 1 or 2, and he is now 25, those 2 injuries have hurt. And the chondromalacia in my knee also hurt. After my kids, after I was on my own, I went to grad school to become a school librarian. And I did that at night while I was working during the day, supporting the kids. So I had a lot on my plate. But during that period, my best friend got a personal trainer, and that person graciously allowed me to join in the personal training once a week. So I did personal training for quite a bit, probably 2 or 3 years during that period. And during that time, we were doing a lot of calorie counting. So we kept a little notebook and recorded everything. I recorded how much water I drank. I recorded every calorie that I took in. And I recorded, so exercise, water, and calories, and I cannot maintain that. I can only do that for like 3 months, 6 months tops, and then it just starts petering out. And I was really, really busy. I was in grad school. I had the 4 kids. I had, my job, and it was just too much. It's just too much. I also have ADHD, so I think that just sticking with anything over the long term is really challenging for people with ADHD. So whenever I would record my food, I would be able to tweak it enough that I could kind of, keep losing or maintaining. But if I stopped recording, I would just go back up again. And also that whole process was based on a calorie restriction. It was purely based on calorie restriction. So there was one period of my life, I think it was in 2014, my oldest daughter got married and I was at the wedding and I had gotten back up to 191. So even with these personal trainer and like recordings and whatever, it wasn't constant yo-yo, but I definitely crept back up to, so I went to that 191 again. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can never be here again. This is my threshold. I'm done, So I got really sick on my birthday, and I just spent the whole day throwing up. And the next day, I um, realized that my stomach was very shrunk. And I thought, I'm just going to not expand the stomach. So I'm just going to eat just a little bit and then keep just eating smaller portions. And I just kept doing that for months and months and months and months. It kept my stomach really small. And I went from 191 to 145 in about probably 9 months. So by 2015, by middle of 2015, I weighed 145. But I only weighed that for like 2 days because from about 155 down to 145, I realized that I was too hungry. I couldn't just keep eating these small portions. And I realize now, of course, that I was way undernourished. I mean, I was probably eating, I knew to not get way low in my calories, but even keeping it at like 1600, I was still just starving. And I just couldn't stay at 145 because I just was too hungry. And I didn't understand that it was the carbohydrates making me so hungry, because if I'd been eating only meat and animal fats, I would have felt so satiated and I would have been so well nourished that I would have been able to keep eating and being satisfied and not starving and wondering when the next meal was. So I went down to that 145, but gradually I just crept back up because I could not maintain that level of food restriction. So I think over the next, I don't remember exactly how it went, but I know what the next big turning point was. So in 2018, in the summer, I am blessed with two best friends, and both of them were in the depths of depression and were making plans. And I was spending the whole summer encouraging them and praying for them and, telling them how valuable they were to me and please don't do this, and just really working hard trying to not lose them. And they were similarly working hard on trying not to be lost. One of them was going to the doctor and getting medications and getting counseling, and the other one was so poor that she couldn't afford any of that. She was doing free online downloads of counseling things, and she was searching the internet for ideas to deal with this, but she was just could not afford even the simplest doctor's visit or any medication. So she's brilliant, and she just went online and started researching how can I deal with depression from a dietary standpoint, because she thought there must be a way. So this was August of 2018. She called me up and said, I've been researching dietary solutions for this depression, and I have found the ketogenic diet. And I've been restricting my intake of carbohydrates to 20 carbohydrates per day, grams of carbohydrates per day or less. And 3 days after I started that, my depression went away. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. That's shocking. I have lots of people in my family and friends that are depressed, and I've never seen anybody recover in anything like 3 days. So I was very interested in this. And then she started keeping track of all the other health benefits that she began to experience. And every couple of days, she'd say, well, you know what? I'm not wearing my reading glasses anymore. And you know what? The arthritis pain that's in my hand is going away. And I'm actually like able to flex my hands, and I'm able to write with a regular pen and not like, an adaptive pen. And I'm noticing all kinds of crazy muscle tone. Like, I don't know what's going on. And by the time November rolled around, She'd been keto for strict, really clean, no additives, all that, really clean keto for from August through November, so 4 months. She had a list of 36 things that were from all like different parts of her body and everything. And they were all gone, all gone. And I was like, how is this possible? So, and she was having clarity of thought. She also has ADHD, and she was like seeing resolution to those symptoms. And I thought, I have to get a taste of this, because I was really struggling with my ADHD. It was presenting issues at work with me being late. It was I'm just scatterbrained. I talk in circles, and it's just hard. It's hard. It's not an easy thing to have, especially in the American culture. So I said, I want to try this. I'm going to try this. So she made me some bulletproof tea, and she got me on keto by starting me actually on 3 days of carnivore, like no carbs for the first 3 days. And then I gradually added, went up to 20 carbs. But just those first 3 days, I was on no carbs. And that Monday, so I started on a Friday, and on Monday, my daughter and son came to pick me up because we're in a community course together, and they were taking me to rehearsal. And my daughter said, Mom, what are you doing? Your skin looks amazing. And that was 3 days. So I was like, well, I'm eating ketogenically. And she's like, well, whatever it is, it's looking really good on you. And so from November 10th of 2018 till mid-November of 2020, I was on keto. And she gave me an app, the friend, she recommended an app called Macros where I could track my macros. She taught me how to set it up and what ratios to set up. And then I just started using it. And at that point, I lost 18 pounds in about 4 months. So I don't know what my starting and ending weights were, but I think I ended up somewhere in the 150s. So that was pretty good. Um, and then, um, and I felt good. I felt good. But here's the biggest thing that happened during keto that was just mind boggling. All my life from like my 20s on, after lunch, I would start to fall asleep. And when I ran a daycare in my home, I would like have all the kids kind of piled around me on the sofa, and we'd read, and then I'd sort of fall asleep while they were all with me. And that was okay when it was my own kids, but when it was other people's kids, I really had to like get up and walk around and shake myself and make sure that I wasn't sleeping on the job. So, but I was fighting an uphill battle all the time. And when I was working, because after I gave up the daycare, I began working in the school system in preparation for being a school librarian. And I was working assisting other teachers, and I would doze off like while they were teaching. And one of them called me out on it and said, what's your problem? And I said, well, I think it's ADHD because my brain is understimulated by sitting here watching. And so the way I thought it was just to get up and walk around and do tasks while I just always kept moving. But it was embarrassing, and it was hard on me, and it was exhausting. And when I was doing pre-K, when they were sleeping, I would like snooze on the desk, and there were other adults around, so it was okay, but it wasn't lovely. It wasn't perfect. But when I went to keto, that completely went away, and it never came back. I just had steady energy all day. I could walk around and do everything. I could sit down and not fall asleep. I could watch the teachers teach, and I would be like bright-eyed and ready. And that was worth the price of admission right there. Just to have me be stable in my energy and not be falling asleep and not affecting my job and my kids. And so that was really, really amazing. I moved in with my kids, so I was no longer living alone, and I couldn't control the food in the house. So I was ending up in 2020 just like starting to eat more of other things. And I kind of drifted away from keto for about 3 years. And then I got chronically ill in March of 2023. I was sick for 5 weeks in a row. I missed 3 weeks of school out of those 5 weeks. And I thought I have to go back to keto because I was so much healthier when I was keto. So I went back to keto, and then that's when I began to discover carnivore. And I began to lose weight again. And from that point on, I've now lost, I went from 181 in February of 2023 down to yesterday was 146. Yeah, so it's been really good. Now, it's taken me a long time to lose that weight. I didn't lose it all really quickly. I lost the first 20 pretty much right away, and then the rest have come off very slowly.
Mm,
And I'm still looking for another maybe 8 or 10 pounds to go, but I'm really thrilled now. I've had to
mm.
get two new wardrobes twice, and I'm looking to get another one this summer. I just go to the thrift store and buy, $50 worth of jeans, and then I'm good.
So, do you notice differences between keto and carnivore?
Yeah, I actually came to carnivore because I was listening to one of your podcasts, and there was a guy named James. I can't remember his last name, but he was really motivating. And he said, you just need to do it. And if you can, start on a Saturday. And I was listening on a Saturday, and I was like, okay, I'm starting today. And this was November 23rd of 2024. So I'd now been doing keto again for a year and a half, and struggling with the food recording and struggling with the food addiction, because I did notice that I still wanted sugar, and sugar was really hard for me. And those 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 days of carnivore would always disappear, and my new efforts to try again would dry up in a few days. But in November of 2023, I was 24, I'm sorry, November 23rd of 24, I was like, okay, I'm just going to try it. And I'm just going to do it for 30 days because I can always go back if it doesn't work or if it's not safe, I was always worried because all the lies in your head about nutrition, they were very hard for me to get rid of because they'd been there all my life. And every once in a while they still creep in and, bother me. So I ended up going carnivore for 30 days. And I didn't notice any physical changes or any like dramatic sleep changes or anything like that. But what I did notice was that my cravings went away. And for the first time in my life, I had no more sugar cravings. And I work in 3 schools, and I live with people who eat whatever. And I'm surrounded by things all day long. So that was gigantic for me. The other big things I noticed are when I have a pure carnivore day, the very first time that happened, I woke up in the morning and I had no thoughts of self-condemnation, which I've had since high school. Zero. I was like, wow, that's incredible. The other thing, I had no nightmares. And I've had nightmares every night for decades. And I notice still that if I can tell that there's an off ingredient in something that I've eaten, even being carnivore now 155 days or something. If I eat something that I didn't like perfectly check the label, like maybe a sausage, and I wake up with a nightmare in the morning, I'm like, oh, yeah, there was a bum ingredient in there. And that is really motivating for me because I hate nightmares. They're terrifying. They're always very threatening and dangerous, and I'm being chased, and it's dreadful. So that alone is worth it to me. And the other piece is that carnivore is so easy to maintain without documenting. I don't have to write anything down. And that's a lifesaver for me because like writing it down, I just can't make that work all the time.
Yeah, it's nice. Like it's got to be the most minimalist form of eating that's possible, right?
For real. I mean, sometimes I'm appalled at like the limited amount of choices that I have in my life, but they're so good that I don't really care. They taste so delicious. You're probably going to ask pretty soon what I do eat.
Yeah, well, yeah, what do you eat?
Yeah, so um, I'm very blessed to have a son that works in a steak house. So he brings home the leftover steaks to me fairly regularly. Now, of course, they're probably cooked in seed oils, but and he does try to get them to cook them for me in butter if he can. But um, I eat steak probably 5 days a week because he brings them home. So I couldn't do it without him, I don't think. um, but in the school year, I usually eat 3 meals a day because I don't really want to go into my day without eating something. And so I eat eggs and bacon, or I eat steak that's left over, from the restaurant or from a previous meal. Um, I don't care for hamburger by itself, like in a power bowl, like you eat. I just, for some reason, I've tried it so many times and it just doesn't. But I like hamburgers, so I'll cook hamburger patties and I can eat them. I think it's probably the texture, whatever it is. I just it doesn't work for me. But I do have a favorite recipe that I use with ground pork. I get a really good high quality ground pork from Misfits Market, which I order my food from. And they just have this amazing pork, and it comes in a big square like package, and I cut it into 6 pieces, and then I flatten them into what they end up kind of looking like tenders, like chicken tenders, and I just put them in a pan and fry them crispy on both sides, and they're crispy like bacon on the outside, but they're tender like a pork roast on the inside, and they're absolutely delicious, and I only season them with salt. And even my daughter, who doesn't even like meat and thinks they're amazing and asks me to make them. So I have pork tenders probably twice a week. And, and then I steak, hamburger patties, pork. And then for variety, I like to buy shrimp about every, like once a month or so. And about once every 2 weeks, we have salmon. Um, and I eat butter. I don't like bite it off the stick, but I do like use a spoon, and I'll bring a quarter of a stick or half a stick to work with me so that when I'm eating my meat, if it isn't like fatty enough, I will eat butter alongside of it. So, um, and I tend to eat like around 8 o'clock, and then don't eat again until 4, which is the end of my school day. But whatever I packed for lunch, that's when I eat it. I eat it like at the end of the school day while I'm still at school. And then I get home and I cook dinner for a couple of family members. And so I usually eat some with them. And then if I'm really having a bad day, then my son will come home at 11 or 11:30 and present me with a warm steak, and then I'll eat some. So it doesn't lend itself to intermittent fasting. um, but
But
generally it's 3 meals.
you're comfortable this way, works for you, and you're feeling good, right?
Yeah. Yeah. In the last month, I've challenged myself to skip breakfast so that I could introduce some intermittent fasting. And I moved from where I was stuck at like 153 down to 146. So the intermittent fasting, introducing that really was a game changer for me.
Interesting. So, what fundamentally, what is it that keeps you going with this? Is it just, it's easy, I can live my life, I don't have to think about food all the time, or is it a little bit more than that?
For me, it's really a lot more than that. I'm looking for carnivore to do something kind of miraculous. I really want it to heal me in my neurology. And the reason I think that that's possible is that I have 2 anecdotes that show me that it's already happening. One is, remember I told you about that knee injury that I got, or that, I started being able to not run anymore and everything. Well, that was a misdiagnosis. Later on, when I started experiencing a hearing loss, I had a full body MRI. And in that MRI, just casually, the person recording the data that they saw on the MRI said, "Oh, and by the way, the patella on the right leg is at an acute angle." And so what this really means is like the bottom of the kneecap has this little ridge, and then it articulates against the femur like that. And the femur has this like groove, and it's supposed to go in the groove, right? But what's happening ever since I was born, because this is a congenital defect, this is articulating on the rise part of the bone. And that's where the pain was coming from. But after I was eating, like in round 2 of keto and moving towards carnivore and really being more ketovore in the last year and a half, I woke up one day and realized I had no pain in that knee. And I had had that all of my life since age 20. I also noticed about a month after that I had no pain in my shoulder and no pain in my elbow. And these were injuries that were like 23 years old. And then my favorite healing was, so I'm a big kayaker. We live on a lake, and I used to just carry my kayak on my shoulder down to the lake, but it was hurting my shoulder and it was cumbersome. So I decided that I would make a kayak cart, and I began researching and researching. Spent about 6 months researching, and then I finally decided that I would just buy one. It's from New Zealand. It's fantastic. It's called a Sea Tug, and it's made for canoes and kayaks, and it makes it so easy and wonderful. And I kept reading on the reviews that it had this awful sound that it made when you pulled the kayak, and that was the only thing that everybody hated about it. But when I got mine, I was like, oh, they must have improved this, because it doesn't make any noise at all, and I'm just pulling it down to the lake and it's fine. And one day my daughter said, Mom, how can you stand that noise? It's just the whole time. And I'm like, what? I don't hear it. And it's because my hearing loss is sensory neural, so it's in the higher pitches. So I just never heard it. So after I'd been exploring ketovore from like, I think this was like November of 23. So I'd probably been on it for like 6 months. I was out kayaking in the evening, and I put the kayak on the cart and I was pulling it back from the lake, and I heard, and I like froze, and I went, wait. And then I pulled the cart again, and I was like, oh, I'm actually hearing it. Oh my gosh, I'm hearing it. And it was the best awful sound I've ever heard, because that meant that my hearing was improving. And I had always been told, you're never going to recover. You're only going to need hearing aids, or that will never get better. But I began to notice over the next couple months that I always had the volume up the highest level on my phone, and now I could keep it at like 3/4 of the volume, because my hearing was actually getting better. And I knew it was possible because I was hearing about carnivores getting healed of MS and Parkinson's, and so I thought, this is neurological, this is sensory neural hearing loss. Why not? Why not? So I just kept going and kept trying, and I'm really looking for carnivore to do what it's already been doing, which is healing me, to heal my neurology, to heal my hearing, to heal my ADHD to the extent that it's possible. Already, right now, with my students, when we dance, I can now jump again. I could never jump before. I can now run 3 blocks and not have any pain at night, or any pain at all. I can bike again. I can do all these things that I couldn't do before. And I'm almost 62. It doesn't go this way. Usually it goes the other way. So I'm looking for deeper neurological healing. That's what keeps me going.
That's awesome. Um, uh, People like save your daughter noticing that you weren't noticing the noise before in the earlier days. But,
Mhm.
the change in you, are people noticing that?
Oh, yeah. Both of my daughters are reluctant to compliment me on this, because one of them actually thinks that this might be an eating disorder for me, because I'm always thinking and talking about carnivore. And, I kind of get that. It has like, it can make us a little bit obsessed because it's so amazing, so and frankly, I think can talk a lot more about food than I ever used to because I'm always watching videos and I'm always thinking about the effects and but it's a good kind of talking about food. It's not I'm not worried about food anymore. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about it. Um, my sons, though, they're very impressed and they do compliment me and they actually have started eating this way. Um, my older son, he's been drastically reducing the carbs and in about 3 months, he lost 30 pounds. Yeah, I know. It's impressive. He was just, and he said, Mom, I'm so cut now. Like I actually can see my abs, which I haven't seen. He's 28. He hadn't seen him in like 4 or 5 years.
And I bet he's
Um,
feeling really good.
really good. Like he's really getting better sleep and just feeling better. The other son is a weightlifter and he gave me some before and after pictures, but I didn't have time to give them to you. But he has reduced his carb intake. He was never a sweets person, but he was eating like, I don't know, breads and pastas and stuff like that. But he also works in a high end restaurant and they have steaks available there for very cheap. So he's been eating a steak or two every day. Um, and both of them eat a steak or two every day. um, and and they've been deliberately because they're seeing such dramatic changes in my health, in my hair, in my skin, in my weight, and they're watching me get new clothes every summer, and they're and they're interested in what I'm learning. So I'm sharing the medical stuff, the Dr. Chafee stuff, and they're very interested. So he weighs the same, but he's more built and he's very chiseled. Like there was a subcutaneous layer of fat over all of that before that's just gone now. And they're both looking at each other and me and going, I can't believe this. So yeah, it's really cool. It's really
That's
cool.
excellent. And I've got a video for your daughter, with, an interview I did with someone from the NHS that talks about, why carnivore is not an eating disorder.
Oh, excellent. Well, I would like to see that. Yeah.
Mm.
Um, I want to tell you one thing about my coworkers. I sometimes bring I remember one time I didn't prepare my breakfast in time, so I brought the bacon with me and I cooked it in the microwave. And this one coworker in another office, like off of the library where I work, he comes out about 15 minutes later and he's like, Do you guys smell something? Like there's some really unusual smell in the library. It it kind of smells like bacon. And then, everybody cracked up and oh yeah, Paula's been eating her carnivore breakfast. So yeah, my coworkers are noticing. Um, but frankly, I was actually kind of hiding what I was eating for the first year because I was afraid of getting a lot of rude comments and like people lecturing me about vegetables and vitamins and scurvy and all that. And but you know what? The Now I actually tell people and they're like, okay, cool. And they're pretty supportive. And they're like, well, we don't know what to get you because we'd like to buy you candy, but you're not going to eat it. So, um, we're going to give you a gift card to like a steakhouse or something. And I said, great, perfect. So anyway, yeah,
To be honest, it feels, just to build on that, it feels kind of amazing how much acceptance carnivore has got over the last 2 to 3 years.
really amazing. Like I've gotten more concern from my immediate family than I have from the people around me. But even in the last 6 months, I've noticed a change. Um, I never met I haven't yet, except for about 2 weeks ago, I finally met a carnivore in real life because we intentionally met each other. She's on the circle group that Jenny Middich has. Jenny Middich has a support group, and I'm part of it, and she's part of it. And she came to the East Coast. I live on the East Coast to visit a cousin. So we ended up meeting at a steak restaurant and having a good meal together. But that was the first and only carnivore that I've met in person. So, um, Yeah, I've been, expecting more pushback, but it's really not happening. And I think people are seeing how well I am and how much energy I have all the time, and that I seem so happy and well that I think they're going to like, whatever, if it works. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just a numbers game, really, right? The more people that are doing it, the more you've got to go, well, they're obviously doing well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
the critics, it just diffuses so many things the critics can throw at it.
Yeah. Yeah. It does. It does.
Yeah. So, if you were advising someone how to get started with carnivore, someone comes to you and says, "Look, I want to do it. Tell me the best way to start to maximize my success." What would you tell them?
Well, I think that learning the science behind it is really critical, because when that programming that's in your brain about what's healthy comes back, you can say, no, but this is what's really happening with insulin. And this is what's really happening with, if you understand what the body is doing metabolically and why this is working, then it gives you so much more commitment. You can fight off those messages much better. So I would recommend watching Anthony Chafee, although he's so committed to such a such a pure form that he might not be the best person to start with, but he is a good person to learn about pretty soon, because not only does he talk very cogently about the science, but he also exposes the history. And the history is incredibly important. You're also really good at exposing the history. So I've already been recommending your channel to a lot of people, just because. You're welcome. It's just so good, and it has something for everybody and everything that they might be encountering. But I have a strong fondness for Carrie Mann. I think his just enthusiasm is over the top, and he's just wonderful. I also love Jenny Middich, who's quite different, but she's very science and geeky oriented, and I really like that she's documenting everything, and she's really explaining the science really well too. And her connections to Dave Feldman and the whole lean mass hyperresponder studies is very exciting. And I just really like how she is very succinct and her approach. And she's one of my biggest, like, I'm a huge fan of hers. So those would be people that I would direct people to. Um, and take your time, do it gradually. I did not suffer any keto flu either time that I did it, that I went into keto. And transitioning to carnivore, I was already at 20 or 10 grams of carbs a day anyway. So I'm just very thankful I didn't. I did have some sharp upper quadrant pain the first week and a half that I went to strict keto, and I was a little nervous about that. But I happened to be in a doctor one day for a strep test, and she examined me and she said, "You're totally fine. It's probably something you ate." And I attribute that thing to my body adapting to zero carbs. Whatever those sharp pains were, they didn't last very long, maybe half an hour or 20 minutes, 5 or 6 times in the first week or so. But it was kind of alarming because I wasn't expecting it. And so, just if anybody experiences that, I would say, if it doesn't last very long, don't worry about it. It's a possibility. And I've never read about or heard about that in the keto flu descriptions.
Yeah, and there's always, there's always days when you wake up with pain as well. Like you slept a bit funny or something like that. You wake up with pain, and if it happens to coincide with a dietary change or something, it's very easy to kind of conflate the two and go, "Oh, it's because I changed my diet. It's because I stopped eating
Yeah,
the
exactly.
cornflakes. That's why I've got this pain."
Exactly. Speaking of which, about 5 years or even 3 years ago, yeah, probably about 3 years ago, I was feeling so old because I would lie in when I got out of bed. I would have to like turn myself very carefully because I had a lot of hip pain. I had a lot of lower back pain. And I'd have to turn myself just so gingerly and then sit up just right and then position my feet just right so I could stand up so I could go to the bathroom. Now just roll right over, pop out of bed. I don't have any lower back pain and I have compressed discs, so I should. And I have no hip pain. I have no knee pain. I have no any pain. And it's so lovely. It's so lovely. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I
So
do have practical tips for people
oh,
who start for.
go ahead.
So I think you should purchase a few things. Here's one.
Mm,
You need a spray bottle and you need to put vinegar in it because you're going to produce a lot of grease. It's going to go on your stovetop. It's going to go on your, on the hood, range hood. And it's going to go on the walls. It's going to go on the coffee pot that's next to it or whatever. And you put a little vinegar and a little water and a lot of water and you spray it. And then you get this friend and you wipe it all down. Um, Also, when you're washing your pans, make sure you wipe them out with paper towels and throw that stuff away because animal fats are solid at room temperature. And when they go into the pipes that are under the ground, they're really solid because under the ground is even colder than room temperature. So I read on a comment one time from a plumber who was carnivore, please wipe out all the grease off your dishes and pans before you put them in the dishwasher or before you wash them. Otherwise, you're going to be digging up your lawn and paying for that yourself. So, and then another practical tip that I have is when you cook, you need to wear one of these, please, because you will ruin your clothing. And if you forget to wear one of these, then you need some of this because you've got to get those stains out.
right. Yeah, I've ruined many a piece of clothing with my cooking.
Yeah, yeah, and I've had to I've ruined several, and I've had to try to really work hard to resurrect the others. And
Yeah.
and then I still forget to put this on.
Mm.
Crazy me.
So I guess in summary, for someone starting, the advice would be go and watch these people on YouTube, take it slowly, and buy some vinegar.
Yes, buy vinegar
Nice.
and wear an apron, please.
Yes. Um, so, Paula, how can people reach out to you? Do you have any social media or any way of getting in contact?
No, I don't. I was on social media 10 years ago and then I just I didn't I was tired of it. So, but I do have an email address which you can put in the show notes. And so if somebody wants to contact me, I'd be happy to talk about carnivore and my experience.
No worries. Thank you. Yeah, I'll put that in the show notes. Thanks so much for your time coming on, sharing your experience, Paula. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's really fun. Thank you for having me.